and via Zoom at the link posted in all public meeting agendas. Attendance via telephone is available using the Zoom connection details. Minutes of tonight's meeting, as well as the audio and video recordings, will be available later at nashua.nh.gov/agenda center. And please select the Zoning Board of Adjustment. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting, please call 603-589-3056, and they will help you connect. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. The chair is in control of the proceedings and calls upon all who wish to speak in order as their raised hands are observed. The board follows the meeting protocols and procedures identified in its bylaws. The applicant will present their case for 15 minutes, followed by questions by the board. Next, persons wishing to speak in favor or with questions or opposition will be asked to speak for up to 5 minutes. If there are questions or opposition, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present a response. Finally, one and only one person with questions or an opposition will be permitted to speak again before the board deliberates and determines an outcome. A timer is used to manage speaking time. Kate Poirier, our zoning board coordinator, will notify us when 1 minute is remaining and again when the speaker's time has expired. If you are participating by Zoom and wish to speak when public input is requested, please use the raised hand option, which can be found under Reactions on a computer or the More menu on a phone. The chair will call you in turn. Please use the lower hand option when you have completed your question or your comment. Please mute your microphone until called upon to speak. Note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call. Tonight we will be hearing requests for deviation from the Nashua Zoning Code in the form of applications for special exceptions and or variances. A special exception is a request that seeks permission to do something that the zoning ordinance permits only under special circumstances. To grant a special exception, 5 points of law are required to be met. These are outlined in the application and will be summarized in board motions. A variance is a request that seeks permission to something that the ordinance does not permit. Variances also have 5 points of law to be met, different from those for special exceptions. Per the City of Nashua bylaws and State of New Hampshire revised statutes, a minimum of 3 or more affirmative votes are required to approve any application. In addition, this board will hear all scheduled cases if a quorum of 3 voting board members is present at this meeting. Any citizen has the right to contest the decision that this board makes. Should we render a decision that you believe is in error, you have the right to request a rehearing. A written rehearing request must be received by the City of Nashua Planning Department within 30 calendar days from the date of decision. Should this board not grant a rehearing request, you can file an appeal directly to the New Hampshire Superior Court. Please contact Mr. Falk of the Planning Department for more information. For this meeting, we have the following full board members in attendance. We have myself, Mary Ellen McKay, the chair. We have Steve Lionel, the vice chair. We have Mr. Jack Currier, our clerk, and we have Mr. J.P. Boucher. We also have the following alternate members in attendance, Mr. Jay Mincara and Mr. Josh Neely. In addition to the board members, we also have Mr. Carter Falk, our deputy planning manager, and Ms. Kate Poirier, our zoning coordinator. I will start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. There are no board members participating by Zoom, so I will eliminate that. Tonight, since we only have 4 regular members and we have 2 alternates, we will alternate between each alternate, and there will be 5 votes happening on each case. However, all 6 of us will participate in the discussion. Mr. Steve Lionel.
Present.
Mr. Jack Currier.
Present.
Mr. Josh Neely.
Present.
Mr. J.P. Boucher.
Present.
Mr. Jay Mincara.
Present.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay. I'm also present. We'll proceed with the first case. Sean J. and Catherine L. Millette, owners, 11 Colleen Road, Sheet C, Lot 1018, requesting variance from Land Use Code Section 190-264 for accessory use area, 40% permitted, 60% proposed, to maintain an 8x40 storage container. This is in the R9 zone in Ward 9. Is there someone here to present this case? Yes. Please step forward.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
who's
sir.
voting on the first case?
Oh,
The alternate?
yeah, I said it before the
Mr.
meeting.
Neely.
Mr. Neely is voting in our first case. Sorry about that.
Hello.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Sean Millette, 11 Colleen Road, Nashua, New Hampshire.
And the floor, sir, is yours.
Excellent. Well, first of all, thank you for hearing me. So the history of our situation on our container here is it all started, we bought the house with a big pool. And we had wanted to put like a pool she shed house thing on the back of it. So we could store our supplies. We had a changing room, a sitting area, and then winter storage for all of our patio supplies. So once we decided on the container, we did call the board about, we called the zoning office about what we had to do, if we could get it. My wife called, that wasn't on the conversations, but we thought we could get it with temporary storage, and then we just needed a permit when the time came. We never knew anything about land use. Even when we found out there was an issue, I couldn't find it online. So that's a little bit of the history, and months later, we found out we were, out of ordinance. So anyway, I'm not sure exactly how to approach this, but I kind of just wrote down the questions on the application and figured I would speak to those. So granting this request would not be contrary to the public interest is because this container will be in the back corner of my lot. It is blocked by a hill and our neighbor's fence. I did send a picture in my application of where it's going to be. It's kind of where the firewood is and the white fence. Not many people can even see it at all. And then it's going to look like a modern home. Like we're going to put windows in it and make it, kind of like, I don't know, Reed's Ferry shed. It's not going to be livable, but you'll be able to sit in there, read a book, change, and then we can store stuff in the winter. Let's see, I don't see it changing the character of our neighborhood because within a mile from our house, somebody has a storage container sitting next to their garage. It's been there 3 or 4 years. They're on Searles Road. It's sitting right on the ground, not level, and is clearly a storage container. Number 2, the proposed use will observe the spirit of the ordinance because my property is considerably larger than other properties in Nashua. What I'm saying here is my yard will not be cluttered by this building. If you look at the size of the scale, it's kind of small. My yard is 0.8 acres, there's 34,000 square feet. The container's 320, it's like less than 1% of my whole yard. And the house came with this big massive pool, so we kind of wanted to accent that to the backyard. And then also having a pool house on my property, I feel would kind of boost my property value, therefore boosting the other property values and not bring down the values in the neighborhood. Number 3, substantial justice would be done to the property/owner by granting the variance because with the size of our pool, having the pool house would complete our backyard, kind of made it the focal point. Keeping the wet kids and clothes out of the house would be great with the changing room. Having a place to store our patio furniture in the winters, it's all just gets piled up in our yard and the winter kind of beats it up. And then because it's already on site due to the confusion I kind of mentioned before, we've already paid and it's sitting there. This is why we ended up here. Number 4, the proposed use will not diminish the values of the surrounding properties because we've made the pool the focal place of our yard. Having the pool house would only increase our property, and again, through the realtors and comps, we feel it would increase the property values of the neighborhood. Number 5, special condition exists such that literal enforcement of the ordinance results in unnecessary hardship because, we kind of thought we did the right thing. We spent the money, we got it delivered, and had it put into our backyard. Our whole property is kind of a special condition, in my opinion. I don't know if you look at our house, but our front door faces the neighbor's house, and it doesn't even face the street. And then the size of our lot makes this request a special condition again, because it's not, our yard's not just gonna be full of containers or, you know, it's gonna be a shed, but I don't feel our outbuildings are crowding up our whole yard. That's pretty much my case here. In conclusion, we have brought up a few times that we have somebody designing an addition for our property now so we can make it an L and actually see the street. And I know they say that you can't look at that, except that without calling, we would have done the addition before getting this container to kind of put us into this position, which is kind of why I'm here today. So that's pretty much my case, and all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Lionel.
Hi. So you say the container will be placed along the back property line. It currently is not.
Correct.
It's right next to your pool.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can see it from the street.
From one of the side streets.
Well, when I drove up to your property, I could see it.
Yeah.
From the street. You know, and it shows in the overhead views it's been there for up to 2 years.
No.
Well, it's sometime between 2020 and 2020.
We put it there this spring.
Okay, well, I said up to 2 years. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
been there for a year, right? So
It's coming up on a year.
coming up on a year.
This
yeah.
spring, yes.
Yeah.
Again, if I can say more, it was with we thought that the storage, the temporary storage, it was allowed to be there, and then we thought making it permanent was just pulling a permit, not anything with this land use. And I've also been gone for the last 6 months on a project. Like, I haven't been home. I've been up in New York on a wind farm, which, you know, I've been talking to the zoning office, and they've been gracious to give me time to get home, to draw up the yard and you know, do all of this. So
Can you talk a little bit more about how you're going to turn the storage container into something that doesn't look like a storage container?
We're going to put windows in it, flower boxes on it, and, you know, make it like a shed. It's going to have a door to walk in. I mean, it's going to look more like one of those modern homes, I would say, like people are living in or buying, like a container home. I don't know if you've seen those that people make. And
Yeah, I have seen them, yeah. I mean, just from the street, it looked like I'm not sure if I could quite tell, but it looked like kind of a rusty storage container.
It's actually bright red with white posts on the corner. It's not rusty at all, but I haven't painted it. Like I said, I put it in there in the spring, and then on June 11th, I went on a job and got back in January.
Okay, those are all the questions I have at this time.
Mr. Minkara.
The size of the container is, you know, fairly large. Is there a reason why you went with a storage container rather than, say, a Reed's Ferry shed or something similar?
I went with the storage container because I had an opportunity to pick one up through my work. They had a couple. I would have got a smaller one had I known it was a land usage thing. We would have made different decisions. I would have waited till after the addition. This is kind of where we're at now, but yeah, that's kind of what led to that.
Mr. Courier.
Just to clarify, is there a shed in front of your house, or is that your neighbor's shed?
There is a shed in front of our house. It's been there since we moved in.
Oh, is that your shed or the abutting property? It wasn't clear to me.
There's one up on the top. There's two kind of next to each other. One is mine, it's just down a little lower, and then there's one, they have one up on top of the hill, where it's kind of like the grade's off on the two.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, so that, I'm assuming, is that shed full, or is there some reason that you couldn't use that for your winter storage needs and changing room?
Well, it's in the front yard.
Oh, okay.
And then, you know, it has the lawnmowers and the kids' bikes and, you know, stuff they play in the street with.
Okay.
Chainsaws, you know, yard equipment.
Okay. And you know, a lot of times, not a lot, like every time, looking at an after-the-fact request, I often look at it as like, what if it was an initial request, right? What if it was not there and there was just a request? It seems to me like 8 by 40 is a large footprint for like a shed. I'm just wondering, like, what would, I'm hearing maybe you don't need it quite that big, or that was the size that was available, I guess I'm hearing. What would be a size of a shed that you think you could store your things in it and act as a changing room?
Well, I mean, there's lots of, I could have got like a 20-foot one. We just didn't know there was a difference there, you know, sort of the changing room. I'd be able to store stuff in there, like all the pool. There's a little plastic one in my yard where the pool chemicals and all the other pool stuff is in that you can barely walk through. So that one would disappear, and I figured that'd be in there, the pump supplies, and then we just have a larger sitting area. So, you know, if we were having a cookout, started raining, we could like all go in there, or, you know, when it's really hot and it's shady over there where we want to put it, we'd hang out in there when it's hot. We just,
hold on, okay, yeah.
sorry, we just had the opportunity for the 40-footer. Bigger, I thought, would be better. My wife would have more room. She'd be happier. It's a sign of her she shed. It was really just ignorance that led us to have that one.
The other question I have is, you mentioned, like, I wasn't clear, like, could other neighbors see the storage container or not? I mean, I certainly took a look. I think most of us do site walks. I got to say, I've always loved Colling Road because it's just a short road and there's not a lot of traffic on it. But, you know, you see it a little from the road, but it's hard to tell if other folks sitting in their backyard are able to see the storage container. What's your opinion on that?
I mean, some people could see it. My neighbor, whose house is taller than my roof, can see everything in my yard, really.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not invisible.
Okay, I think I'm all set. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Mr. Boucher.
Just to follow up on Mr. Currier's comment, so I saw where the shed is currently. You're gonna, the container, you're going to move it to the back property line. When you move it back to the property line and when all the foliage is in, what's your opinion about whether or not you think people are gonna be able to see that container, or is that gonna be pretty much shielded at that point from eyesight from most people?
I would say it would mostly be shielded, except for the one neighbor that sits on top, and maybe somebody down, it's 10B, I think, is the other road, but there's another road that kind of goes up a hill that may, I mean, I haven't gone up there to look, but we do get pretty private in the summer when all the leaves come in.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? There's no one on Zoom, correct?
There's a couple.
I can't see. I see
They're not for
us.
this case, but you can ask anyway.
Okay. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone here who would like to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application? Okay, you may come up, please.
Sir, you may sit down.
Yeah, you may sit down. You can go ahead and have a seat. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Scott Cody, and I reside at 3910B Drive, and I'm here this evening with my wife, Bonnie. We are direct abutters to the applicant. In keeping with full disclosure, I want you to know that I am a former member of the National Board of Education. I'm a former member of the National Board of Aldermen, and I am a current member of the National Building Code Board of Appeals. Also, because of my employment with the Southern New Hampshire Medical Center, I appear before this board and other city boards regularly. I think it's important to provide you with some history concerning the shipping container before I address concerns with the variance application. The shipping container arrived in my neighbor's backyard in December of 2021. We were informed by other neighbors that the container was only temporary while renovations to an existing garage were completed. After nearly a year passed, we began to realize that this was not so temporary after all. Notices were filed with the City Code Enforcement on October 14th, 2022, with follow-up communications on October 31st, 2022, November 14th, 2022, to Alderman Sullivan on 11/19/2022, Code Enforcement again on 11/21/22, 12/13/22, and 1/13/23. To the application and to the conditions that must be found before a variance can be approved. Number one, granting the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. Approving this variance will set a precedent that will allow a pre-manufactured shipping container to establish percentages of accessory use areas. This is contrary to the public interest. It's also important to note that the character of the neighborhood was altered in December of 2021 when the container was dropped in the backyard. The proposed use will observe the spirit of the ordinance. The spirit of the ordinance is intended to provide a balance of accessory use space to the property. The applicant's property can meet the 40% permitted under the ordinance if you remove the size of the shipping container from the equation. That's simple. The hardship must be with the land, not with the shipping container or the fact that the container is there now. Substantial justice will be done to the property owner by granting the variance. The property owner can achieve the 40% accessory use area under the current ordinance. There's nothing preventing this other than the size of the container itself. The proposed use will not diminish the values of the surrounding properties. I'm not able to speak to the impact on property values, but I can tell you that other neighbors have made significant changes to their property to increase their privacy from the applicant's property. Finally, special conditions exist that such literal enforcement of the ordinance results in unnecessary hardship. As previously stated, there's no hardship with the property. The property will support a 40% accessory use area. There are no special conditions on the property that would impact its reasonable use. The applicant has not established any special condition that exists with the property that caused the proposed use to be reasonable. So I thank you for that, and I'm happy to answer any questions the boards may have. And I also have two photos that I would like to present to the board from my backyard, looking at this container, if I may approach.
Yes, sir. I don't know if I can get out of here. Oh.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Boucher.
So thanks for coming. From what you observe from your property, is the main concern the shipping container itself, the size, or let's say the applicant had come and said, we'd like to build a like pool cabana type of a structure. Is it just the fact of adding another structure, or is it the shipping container itself that is the concern, or the size of the shipping container?
Two concerns. One is the shipping container, and it's been there as long as it has. And two, it's not within the public interest to have a shipping container set the size of an accessory use area. And that's what's being proposed here. And this the container where it will be placed, where it's proposed, is in direct view from the back of my property.
So just to follow up, just so I understand where you're coming from, so I can understand. If the applicant had come in front of us looking to build or to place like a Reed's Ferry type of a structure, in your mind, would that be different than the request for the shipping container?
I have no issue with anybody following the ordinance, which is, 40% of your property is entitled to be used as an accessory use area. What's being proposed here is a shipping container in excess of 60% of the use areas. That's really where my concern is, besides the fact that I believe you're being misled in terms of how long the container's been there and the concerns that I've had with it.
All right, thank you very much.
So,
Mr. Lionel?
Could you characterize the discussions that you've had with the city on this issue?
So there have been emails through code enforcement, back and forth advising them of what was going on, just to follow up on things. And I know that it takes time to respond to these sorts of things. So it's really just an exchange of where we are with the process. Following the last communication that we had, we received notice of this variance application.
I think what I'm asking is, what particular aspect did you bring up initially? I mean, people come here for asking for variances from the accessory use percentage all the time, and sometimes we grant it, sometimes we don't. And there is no precedent involved. We try to take each case individually, but I'm curious as to, when you initially approached the city, what was the nature of your complaint?
That there was a shipping container that we could see from our backyard. I happen to have pretty good knowledge of what the zoning ordinance in the city of Nashua allows. And, again, we were told initially that the container was going to be there temporarily while there were repairs made to the garage. After a year went by, nothing happened at that point. But that photo that I shared with you is the view from my kitchen window.
Okay, thank you.
So,
No other questions?
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Millett, you have the opportunity to come up and speak to Mr. Cody's concerns.
I didn't know if you would ask for Zoom.
I did.
Oh, okay,
There's
I'm
nobody
sorry.
there.
Okay.
Hi, so, he obviously knew a lot more about this than I did. I don't know where he got his information about December. I don't know where he got his information about a garage. We had nothing going on to a garage or in a garage. We brought it in, like I had said, for temporary storage for we were putting some kitchen cabinets in. We were gonna put the kitchen cabinets in it. Everything else I said is how I ended up in this particular situation. And I don't know what else to say. Seems like he's out for me. I don't know. This is news to me. Like I said, my case was what it was. His information is incorrect about December and work on a garage. I don't know where that came from, but then really that's all I have to say. I don't know if you have any questions or not, but.
No questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Cody, did his comments respond to your concerns? And you have 5 minutes, actually.
I certainly don't need 5 minutes. Again, Scott Cody, 3910 B Drive. I know it's real. We had communications with other neighbors. We have text messages back and forth that are date stamped. We know when the unit arrived. We were told the intention was to temporary storage for work while it was being done in a garage. Whether that's the case or not, I'm not 100% sure. It's what we were communicating with our neighbors at that point. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Lionel.
I'm having difficulty with this particular request. I think that it does not meet the points of law. It is excessive and unnecessary, and there's, that it was a shipping container sort of makes it worse because it's unsightly. I'm having very much difficulty finding support for this case.
Thank you. And before we continue, Mr. Falk, can I question you about this email we received concerning they'd be right at 40%, Was a previous owner received the building permit?
When we looked at the building file, the previous owner did get a building permit for the pool in 1988 and for the shed in 1995. And according to our records, it looks like they're right at 40% with the existing pool and shed as compared to what the house would allow. So
Okay.
this is an extra 20%, so that's how they got to 60.
Thank you. I just wanted that clarification. Mr. Boucher?
I'm also having difficulty with the application. What I'm having difficulty is with the percentage related to the size of the shipping container. Now, I'll tell you that my reasoning or looking at this is, again, as Mr. Lionel stated, that we hear every case separately. In my view, the way I look at it is, if the applicant had come to us looking for something more reasonable in size, for a pool house or cabana, we've seen this before. Not that we agree on every one of them, or we want to move forward with them, but I would not be, I'd be more open to that. If the applicant had, let's say, for example, a shipping container that he stated that, hey, we're going to put a shallow roof on it, we're going to side the whole thing. So basically, you wouldn't see the shipping container, it would just be the structure that would, and it would be just a cosmetic overbuild over the container. That would be some type of consideration for me, because again, making it look more like it belongs, in the neighborhood type of thing. So, but my primary concern is the size of the structure. I am not in this particular case. I know we're looking for 20% overage. What I'm saying is, if there was some overage being requested to add some type of structure to service the pool and for that type of purpose, I'd be open to that, but not open to the size that we're looking for here, and the shipping container being left as it is.
Thank you. Mr. Courier?
I'm struggling with this application also. A couple of things. I mean, the property itself, perhaps there's some merit to some overage of accessory use area for, for maybe another storage structure, perhaps. But what's in front of us is an 8x40 storage container, and I think that's just over the top. I mean, in taking the one thing I was kind of holding on to was, well, maybe no one can see it except me when I do a site walk and ride around the cul-de-sac a couple times. But the photos from Tenby Drive is like my sum of all fears, because I'm thinking, like, what if my backyard neighbor had an 8x40 shed that not only would I see when I'm in my backyard, but looking out my kitchen? I mean, I just wouldn't. I think that is not within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. I do think it impacts property values. The topography goes up here, and I've never been in the backyard of Tenby Drive. It's one of my walking routes, but I know it goes up, and it takes what I would expect as an otherwise kind of naturally vegetated area, and you have a shipping container there. I struggle with that. And, I go by that shipping container on Searles Road. It's been there for a while. And, I mean, I've been on this board long enough that I can kind of spot a zoning violation from a mile away, but I'm not the kind of person to just go call code enforcement. But I think that shipping container looks terrible on Searles Road, and it's not a rationale to allow another shipping container, because there's one over here that probably isn't legal. So I don't think it meets any of the criteria. I mean, I appreciate Mr. Cody giving, I think, what is a candid expression from an abutter, and I find merit in his testimony, and I'm not supportive of this at this point. looking
Thank-
to hear other opinions.
Thank you, Mr. Courier. Mr. Neely?
I firmly believe the folks on 10B Drive are negatively affected by this container. Having done a drive-by back there, I mean, it jumped right out at me. I live in a similar type neighborhood, and I also would not be a happy camper if somebody showed up with a, that size container right behind me. I am not in favor of this variance, and I believe everybody else has stated the reasons eloquently.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara?
I also can't find support, and I think just to follow up with Mr. Boucher's comments, I would look at this as, if this were proposed, would I support, a 40-foot structure, shipping container or no, with an overage of this, magnitude, a 40%, a 40-foot long shed is too long.
Thank you. When Mr. Boucher spoke about the container and the size or putting a roof on it, it reminded me of the Maine Cabin Masters. And they make cabins. I saw it out of a shipping container. And that's exactly the visual you gave me. And when Mr. Courier spoke about the picture, and when I saw the picture, it said more than the words. And when Mr. Cody brought it up and gave us the pictures, that was a visual that was really helpful. I, too, cannot find support. I think if this was a shed and it was smaller in size and dimension, it might be a whole different game. But this, I think, is too large. I just think of my own backyard. What if my neighbor did that? So, having said that, would somebody care to make a motion? Mr. Lionel. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion. The owner is Sean and Catherine Millette, address 11 Colleen Road, Sheet C, Lot 1018, requesting variance from Land Use Code Section 190-264 for accessory use area 40% permitted, 60% proposed, to maintain an 8-foot by 40-foot storage container. This is in the R9 zone, Ward 9. The board believes that this variance is not needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, that there are no special conditions of the property, and the board believes that the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the variance. The board believes this is not within the spirit and intent of the ordinance, and we have testimony that it is looked poorly on by neighbors, and so we believe it will adversely affect the property values of surrounding parcels. We believe it is not. We believe it is contrary to public interest to approve this, and will not make a comment about substantial justice. Obviously, the homeowner would prefer that the storage container remain, but given all of this, I make a motion to deny the variance.
Do I have a, thank you, Mr. Courier, for your second. And again, for the record, Mr. Neely, you will be voting on this case. Mr. Lionel, how do you vote?
Mr. Lionel votes in favor of the motion to deny.
Mr. Boucher?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Courier?
Mr. Courier votes in favor of the motion to deny.
Mr. Neely?
Mr. Neely votes in favor of the denial of the variance.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor of the denial. Mr. Millette and Mrs. Millette, the board has determined that they cannot support the variance for your request. Should you have any questions, comments, concerns, please re-refer back to either Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Poirier in the planning department. They can help you with next steps. And thank you for your presentation. Anyone may appeal any decision this board has made. They have 30 days with which to do so. And thank you for your time this evening. Case number 2. And Mr. Minkara, you will be voting in this case. Bowers Street Realty Trust, Constance Gauthier, trustee. Owners, Traditions Barbershop, Eddie Content, applicant. 42 Harbor Avenue, sheet 19, lot 78, requesting use variance from Land Use Code Section 190-15, Table 15-1, number 35, to convert a former retail space to a barber shop. This is in the RB zone in Ward 7. And Attorney Prunier, I see you. If you would state your name and address for the record, the floor, sir, is yours.
I've been called worse. Madam Chair.
Oh, Perlman, I'm so sorry.
I came back from the,
Went right, you know.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good evening. Andy Perlman with the law firm of Prunier and Perlman here in Nashua, here on behalf of the Bowers Street Realty Trust, Eddie Content, who wants to open up his barbershop at 42 Bowers. Madam Chair, members, I'm going to ask that you bump us down the agenda, please. I have a matter with the Board of Aldermen that's going to start up momentarily. I'm early on the agenda with the Board of Aldermen downstairs, so if you could push us down the agenda, I should be back within a half an hour.
Well, I can move you to, at this point, probably the last case.
Okay, fair enough.
Fair enough?
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. We will move to case number 3. Linear Retail Nashua Number 9 LLC owner, Spectrum Signs and Graphics, applicant 270 Amherst Street, Sheet E, Lot 268, requesting the following variances. 1, from Land Use Code Section 190-101E2, to exceed maximum ground sign area for a corner lot with 2 ground signs, 100 square feet permitted per sign. 145 square feet existing on sign facing Amherst Street, an additional 24.91 square feet proposed for a total area of 169.91 square feet, and 2, from Land Use Code Section 190-101E4, to encroach 17 feet into the 20-foot required setback to add 2 tenant panels to bottom of existing ground sign. This is in the HB Zone, Ward 1. Mr. Neely, you will be voting on this case. I'm going to keep it in because I had already stated for the case number 2, so it's not that we're crossing paths, Mr. Minkara. Is there somebody here who can speak?
Yes, good evening. Nick Jarvis here. I'm on Zoom from Spectrum Signs. How are you?
I think we're fine, sir. The floor
Excellent.
is yours if you would just state your name and address for the record.
Absolutely. Nick Jarvis, 289 New Road, Salisbury, New Hampshire. I'm with Spectrum Signs, and I'm representing Linear Retail on this this variance. Jared is also on the call. He is from Linear Retail. He may jump in from time to time, but I'd be happy to go ahead if everybody's ready.
You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. So what we're looking at here is an existing sign. The existing sign has been in place for quite some time. We're looking to just update this sign. Currently, the existing sign does not allow enough signage for the tenants within the space. And I do have to go ahead and apologize. I noticed that my team submitted an outdated drawing. The intent here was to add 4 tenant panels, not 2. So we're actually looking for a variance of 49.82 square feet, not the 24 that was noted on the submittal. The reason
Okay,
being,
if I could, excuse me, Mr. Jarvis.
Yes, ma'am.
How, I need to ask Mr. Falk a question. Mr. Falk, how was this advertised?
It was advertised to add an additional 24.91 square feet, and it was the 2 panels. So it's the drawing that you just had up there, that's what we had. So if they're going to ask for additional above and beyond that was advertised, the case really shouldn't be heard. We have to re-advertise it.
And Mr. Jarvis, that's why I stopped you, because I needed to hear from the planning department just what we can and cannot do. And,
Understood. Understood. And Jared, if you can hear me, would you prefer to continue with the 2 tenant panels that we have presented and, come back to the board for the 4? Or would you like to hold off and pursue the 4 tenant panels?
Hello everybody, Jared Jamal, Linear Retail. I think we're fine proceeding. I think we prefer to hopefully have an answer sooner rather than later. And I think the 2 panels is a fine, it's a fine addition. Ideally 4 is fine, but I think our timing is more important to us. So I think we opt to proceed if that is okay with everybody.
No, thank you, sir. That's why we had Mr. Falk here, and that's why you're here. Mr. Jarvis, you may proceed.
Thank you very much. So we are going to be proceeding with the 2 tenant panels as shown on the proof that was recently up on the screen. The existing site, like I said, has that sign there, and there's just not enough space for those tenants to advertise. All we're looking to do is replicate the size of the smaller panels that are in place. So you'll notice the CVD, the Verizon panels, they would be the exact same size. They would be built the exact same way. This would be an internally illuminated cabinet mounted below that decorative bar. We would have Lexan faces directly printed, so everything would match. So that's really what we're going for here. I believe that substantial justice would be done to Linear Retail because they'd be able to adequately advertise for their existing tenants and future tenants. They do have, contracts in place with those existing tenants, which they have to keep that signage. So we've looked at the option of potentially resizing and restructuring that pylon. But due to those contracts with those longstanding tenants there, that's just not something that we're able to do. So we believe that this would be the most feasible solution so they could advertise those individuals and their businesses and people be able to come and obtain their services within that lot. Okay? So if there is any questions, please let me know. I think this is fairly straightforward. Like I said, an existing sign, there's no groundwork that would be done. There is great visibility below that sign cabinet to the traffic going through there still. I think there's about 8 feet of visibility below those 2 tenant panels. So if there is any questions, please let me know and I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Mr. Courier has a question.
So I remember approving the sign years ago, and I remember the applicant saying that this sign was appropriate for the build out of the property. So, why is there another building or more tenants, or what's the request for the 2 new signs needed for? Is it the new building that's kind of in front of Aldi?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Jerry.
I can answer that, Nick. So actually, Linear Retail, we purchased the property about, just over a year ago now, and there were 3 vacancies at the property when we purchased it. We have since leased up the 3 vacancies, but there were only 2 pylon slats available. So I'm not sure what the previous owner did in terms of spaces or slats, but when we bought the property just over a year ago, there were 3 vacancies and only 2 available pylon slats.
Because when a sign, typically when an established sign comes in, and I'm reviewing it on behalf of this board, I asked the question of, like I just did, and I also asked the question, is there a proposal for any more signage that isn't covered on this? I can't take back what I've heard already before this meeting, but I asked the question even if I didn't hear that you wanted 4 panels. Are you going to request, are you planning on requesting more?
No, I apologize. It was tough for me to hear at the last part there, but I believe your concern was, where's it stop, right? Are you going to keep asking for more signage?
Yeah.
Exactly, right. I mean, what I believe and what I've seen on this existing tenant map is these spaces are being utilized the best they can. Things have altered. I want to say that spaces may have been taken by larger tenants in the past. And now, with COVID that came through and businesses moving and things like that, things have changed and Linear's had to adapt. And some of those larger spaces, they have consolidated to smaller spaces, which have created those additional units within the space. And I think that's what we're seeing here, is that where this was larger spaces and larger tenants to begin with, it's now come down to these smaller tenants, which is requiring more tenant panels.
All right, thank you.
I saw Mr. Minkara and then Mr. Boucher.
So if I could ask, how many units are there in this complex?
Currently, based off the map that Jared's provided, there is 9 tenant spaces within this lot. And what we're looking for with this variance would be 10 tenant spaces. That additional space to be utilized for linear, to be able to put their logo up there and contact information for anybody that was looking to lease any open units, if there is any.
Are you good, Mr. Minkara? Mr. Boucher?
That answered my question, because there was 5 original ones that I remember. So now there's 9. So that answers that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Lionel?
Just so I understand, I'm looking at the current sign, there are 6 panels, and the request before us is to add 2 to make 8. Not 10, because 10, if you had added 4, that would have made 10. Do I understand that correctly?
When I was calculating those tenant panels, I was just noting, you've got one large one at the top for Aldi there. So that was the first tenant panel in the major tenant space. The second one would be the pet supplies. And then you've got the additional 6 at the bottom. So we're just looking to add 2 more signs on the very bottom of that, totaling 10 tenant panels. And again, those 2 additional panels are the smaller ones. They're the 68.25 by 22. It's noted in that yellow box there. Same size as the Civic Cafe and the garage.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
Here,
Yeah.
but they've got more than.
Okay, yeah, all right, so what we were given in the packet is not the same as what's actually on the picture. Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Is there anyone on Zoom who has, would like to speak in favor? Is there someone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Is there anyone on Zoom who has any opposition, comments, questions, or concerns with this application? I don't see anything. Is there anyone here who would like to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Boucher.
I'm generally in favor of the application, and this is why, again, I was here when we first heard this case, so it brought back, remember what we're talking about. Again, the buildings are set back, right, except for the building in the front of the restaurant. And I remember when they first put that sign, there was the whole Pep Boys was kind of intertwined with that, but it was a separate lot and all that stuff. But I think it makes sense at this point. I didn't realize it was 9 in there. I know one had got split up, but I didn't realize how many. I didn't really pay attention to that. So that makes sense. I don't think that the overage is going to make a significant difference as you drive by. I think it's important to have the sign there, and also the placement of the sign, I don't see any reason where it would block the view for safety reasons at all. So I don't really find any reason to deny the application, so I'm going to support it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Courier.
Mr. Boucher's pretty much captured my thoughts. I felt, a thought I had was, well, maybe just make the signs a little smaller, and do they need the extra overage? But when I went and looked, in person, I didn't think that adding 2 panels, just below what was there of the same size, I was concerned it was going to block the sight lines, but it won't. It's getting closer to blocking the sight lines, but I don't think there's any problem there. And so I think it's a reasonable request to up this overage a little bit, and I'm willing to support it, unless I hear good rationale why I have a bad idea on this support.
Thank you. Mr. Neely.
My main concern with this would have been the traffic sight lines, but as we've spoken about, when you're driving by with an SUV or smaller, you can easily see through there. You can see traffic coming in and out. I think it's critical for their business plan that they allow all of the businesses in there to advertise their location. So for those reasons and the reasons stated by the others, I'm in favor of this application.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara.
I also support the application, and I just add, you know, in looking at that sign today from the jug handle, I happen to be there for another reason as well, but that's a very congested area given the divided nature of the highway. If you miss that shopping center, if that's your destination, then getting back to it is, you know, a chore. Obviously, you're going to have to go all the way back, somehow make a U-turn, come back around. But so I think it's in the public interest that there be clear signage for the businesses that are in there, because you're not going to see the building.
Thank you. Mr. Lionel.
I'm in support of the application as presented. If they had gone ahead and asked for 4 panels, I might have another answer, but the 2 panels I think is reasonable.
Thank you. I too am in support, and I agree, Mr. Minkara, if you miss something, that's a long trip up and back. So yeah. Would somebody care to make a motion? Thank you, Mr. Boucher.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the area variance for Linear Retail Nashua No. 9 LLC owner, Spectrum Signs and Graphics, applicant at 270 Amherst Street, Sheet E, Lot 268, requesting the following variances. 1, from Land Use Code, Section 190-101, Section E, subsection 2, to exceed maximum ground sign area for a corner lot with 2 ground signs, 100 square feet permitted per sign, 145 square feet existing on sign facing Amherst Street, an additional 24.91 square feet proposed, for a total area of 169.91 square feet. And 2, from Land Use Code Section 190-101, Section E, subsection 4, to encroach 17 feet into the 20-foot required setback to add 2 tenant panels to the bottom of the existing ground sign. This is in the HB Zone, Ward 1. We find that the variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, given the special conditions of property. Again, this property has all the retail units set back, and so this sign is critical for directional purposes. The benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonable or feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the variance. It is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. It will not adversely affect property values of surrounding parcels. It's not contrary to public interest, and substantial justice will be served. So again, I make a motion to approve the area variance.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Lionel. Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor of the motion to approve.
Mr. Neely, how do you vote?
Mr. Neely's in favor.
Mr. Lionel.
Mr. Lionel's in favor.
Mr. Boucher.
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. God bless you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jarvis and Mr. Jamel, congratulations. Your application has been approved. As we have stated, anyone has the opportunity to appeal any decision made by this board, and they have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, concerns, need any assistance, please re-refer back to either Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Poirier in the Planning Department. Again, thank you very much. Congratulations on your variance.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
You
Thank
also.
you, everybody.
Okay, are we all good to continue? Mr. Minkara, you will be voting in this case. J&T Investments, LLC, care of FW Web Company, Robert I don't know what that is.
Somebody's making a phone call.
Oh,
It's the timer, it's okay.
I'm going to kill this name. Musarone, owner. Buoyant Signs, Christopher Ram, applicant. 1 Redmond Street, Sheet Lot 141, requesting variance from Land Use Code Section 190-108C3 to exceed maximum wall sign area 150 square feet permitted, 132 square feet existing, 1 additional 30 square foot wall sign proposed for a total wall sign area of 162 square feet. This is in the PI Zone, Ward 5. Is there someone here to present this application?
Hi, I'm on Zoom. I'm here representing Point Out Signs.
And if you would please state your name and address for the record.
Bethany Leonard, 1 Jordan Lane, Fairhaven, Mass.
Thank you, Bethany. The floor is yours. You may proceed.
I am representing FW Web. They are asking for an additional 30 square feet of signage to put at their trade counter entrance. So what you see on the screen right now is actually what is existing for Frank Webb Home. On the next page, you will see the sign that we're requesting. It is a non-illuminated angle frame with vinyl graphics. On this elevation, they have 2 doors. The door to the right is actually an office and sales door. And then the one where we're putting the sign above is the entrance to their trade counter, which is what a lot of general contractors, that's where they're going to get their supplies. And there's been confusion over which door to go into. So we do want to make sure that it is clearly marked so they know where they are going. This sign faces the parking lot. It does not face any other buildings. The front of their building actually faces Route 3. So their visibility is all from the highway. So once you turn in to their parking lot, this sign will face you directly as soon as you turn in. So there'll be no confusion as to where to go. They do have the FW Web sign, and that one does face the highway. So where 2A is on the site plan, that's the location of where we are asking to add an additional 30 square feet, just to make sure that it is clearly marked and people are going in the correct door, because they have had lots of confusion as to which door to go in. That I think is pretty straightforward for this one. So if you have any questions, I am happy to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Mr. Courier.
Just wanted to, could you repeat, that was a non-illuminated, and what was the construction of it? Proposed construction?
It's an aluminum tube frame, so it's an aluminum angle frame with a flat aluminum face on the front of the frame, and then it has, it's painted with applied vinyl graphics on top of it.
And it's non-illuminated, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone here who would like to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application? Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to the application? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Neely.
I had an opportunity on my site visit to watch a commercial vehicle driving around aimlessly in the parking lot looking for this entrance. It was an interesting experience, and as you know, many commercial vehicles don't have the best sight lines. Watching this gentleman drive back and forth while other folks were in the parking lot was an eye-opening experience for me. So I am in favor of this variance, primarily for the safety factor. I was not aware going into this that this was a non-illuminated sign. I think that's even better, to not have any type of glare or distraction for Route 3. I know it's to the side, but you know, if you're going northbound, you still would see that as well. So just primarily for the safety factors, I am in favor of this variance request.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara.
I also support the variance request. I think the overage is modest, and the need for a sign over the entrance that the public goes to just makes sense.
Thank you. Mr. Lionel.
I'm also in support of the variance for the reasons my colleagues have stated.
Mr. Courier.
I'm also in support. I just wanted to emphasize the non-illumination, I think, is appropriate, because people who are going to be using that are already in the parking lot, and they don't need a lot of flash. And I think there's a lot of flash going on the highway from the other sign, so I appreciate, this non-illuminated, and the orientation of it is really facing the parking lot, not the highway. Just want to get that out also.
Thank you. Mr. Boucher.
I support the applications for all the reasons spoken to.
Thank you. Myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also support the application for all the aforementioned reasons. Would somebody care to make a motion? Mr. Boucher, thank you, sir.
I'd like to make a motion for JNT Investments LLC, care of FW Web Company, Robert Muscherone, owner. I apologize to that gentleman. Owner, Point Signs, Christopher Ram, applicant, 1 Redmond Street, Sheet E, Lot 141, requesting a variance from Land Use Code, Section 190-108, Section C, Subsection 3, to exceed maximum wall sign area, 150 square feet permitted, 132 square feet existing, 1 additional 30 square foot wall sign proposed, for a total wall sign area of 162 feet. 162 square feet. It's in the PI zone, Ward 5. We find that the variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, given the special conditions of the property. Again, this is more of a directional sign for the contractor side of the business to lead them in the correct location, as like I said, as a directional sign. It's the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the variance. It is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. It will not adversely affect property values of surrounding parcels. It's not contrary to public interest, and substantial justice would be served. So again, I make a motion to approve the area variance.
Thank you. Would somebody care to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Lionel. And again, Mr. Minkara, you are voting in this case, sir. Mr. Minkara.
Mr. Minkara votes in favor.
Mr. Lionel.
Mr. Lionel votes in favor.
Mr. Courier.
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Boucher.
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. That is a unanimous decision. Congratulations, Ms. Leonard. The application has been approved. As we've stated previously, anyone has the opportunity to appeal any decision made by this board, and they have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please re-refer back to either Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Poirier in the Planning Department. God bless you, Mr. Courier. Thank you for your application, and please apologize to the owner, because I know I probably killed his name, and I apologize. So thank you very much for your application.
Thank you.
Okay. Case number 5. And Mr. Neely, you will be voting on this case. Glenwood Properties LLC owner, Point Signs, Christopher Ram, applicant, 21 Riverside Street, Sheet 75, Lot 62, requesting variance from Land Use Code Section 190-103A1 to maintain one off-premises 9.3 square foot tenant panel and add an additional 9.3 square foot panel on an existing ground sign for the benefit of FW Web Company located at 1 Redmond Street. This is in the PI Zone, Ward 6. Is there someone here to present this application?
Yes, I'll be presenting this one as well.
Could you please state your name and address again for the record, Ms. Leonard?
Bethany Leonard, 1 Jordan Lane, Fairhaven, Mass.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
So I am here regarding an off-premise sign It is a non-illuminated post and panel style sign that is on the property of Central Paper. We have discussed with Central Paper as well as FW Web regarding this sign. They do currently have a Frank Webb home panel on this sign that I was not aware that the prior owner did not go to you guys for. So I am asking for them to maintain that panel. We will be replacing it just to update the color to the new Frank Webb home blue. It's a little bit darker and easier to read, as well as replacing the Central Paper sign to be able to move it up slightly to be able to fit an FW Web company panel in between the two. Where FW Web is located, they have excellent visibility from Route 3, but once you try to get off of Route 3 to find them, they are on a road that basically it is the only they are the only thing on the road. There's like a back entrance to another parking lot for the abutting property, but they are the only company on Redmond, so they have no visibility from Riverside Street, which is where everyone needs to come from to be able to access their property. So having that sign at the corner with their panels there is a huge visibility standpoint for them, for customers, for contractors, to easily know where they're going and to not miss that turn and have to go past it, turn around, try to figure out where they're going. Basically all of the signs on their building have no visibility unless you're on Route 3, and you can't just jump off of Route 3 to get into their parking lot. You do have to go around quite a bit off of Riverside to get to their location. So Central Paper is on board. They are 100% approved of having the sign panels on their property on their sign to help with that visibility. We are maintaining them at a small size, as well as non-illuminated. We don't need the lighting of them. Most of the business is during daytime hours anyways. And it is single-sided and angled far enough back off the property to the road where it doesn't interfere with any site visibility with the location of anybody trying to turn in or out of those streets. If you do have any other questions, I'm happy to answer any of them.
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, I'm going to ask if there's anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in favor of this applicant. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak with opposition? Comments, questions, concerns? No. Is there anyone here who would like to speak with any questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to the application? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Minkara.
Overall, really, I think it is a reasonable request. Off-premise signs, often give me pause, but I think in this case, the sign itself, structure exists. It's adding, another panel to it, albeit it's already there. And I think the need to provide direction to the property does make sense. I found myself confused as to where it was, how to actually access that property.
Thank you. Mr. Lionel.
I'm in favor of the application.
Mr. Courier.
I'm in favor of the application. I think Mr. Minkara's captured my thoughts very well. I also wanted to say I'm surprised that the paper company is in business. It's been a dilapidated sign and getting worse for years, and I thought the company must have folded up a decade ago, and it's just, falling apart. But it looks like it's going to come back to life here if this application gets approved.
Mr. Boucher.
I also support the application.
Mr. Neely.
I will admit to the board that a few years ago I missed this turn attempting to shop at FW Webb, and so I did the turnaround at the high school. That being said, we need to eliminate this potential safety concern with, once again, commercial vehicles doing turnarounds at the high school or somebody else's parking lot. Anything we can do to add signage here to avoid that, I think, is in everybody's best interest. I'm excited to see that CP paper merchant sign get refurbished. It looks a little beat. So for those reasons, I'm in favor of this application.
Thank you. I, too, am in favor for all of the aforementioned reasons, well-stated reasons. Is there somebody who would like to make a motion? Mr. Boucher, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the area variance for Gledwood Properties LLC owner, Poignant Signs, Christopher Ram, the applicant, 21 Riverside Street, sheet 75, lot 62, requesting a variance from Land Use Code section 190-103, section A, subsection 1, to maintain one off-premises 9.3 square foot tenant panel and add an additional 9.3 square foot panel on an existing ground sign for the benefit of FW Web Company located at 1 Redmond Street. It's in the PI zone, Ward 5. We find that the variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed to property, given the special conditions of the property. Again, FW Web is located on Redmond Street and is not visible from Riverside Street. So again, this is it's a sign to give direction and also for again, the safety of others traveling on that road. The benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the variance. It is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. It will not adversely affect the property values of surrounding parcels. It is not contrary to public interest, and substantial justice will be served. So again, I make a motion to approve the area variance.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Courier. Mr. Mintara. Oops, I'm sorry. Mr. Lionel, how do you vote?
Mr. Lionel votes in favor.
Mr. Courier.
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Boucher.
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Neely.
Mr. Neely votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. That is a unanimous decision. Again, Ms. Leonard, congratulations. Your variance has been granted. As we've stated previously, any decision made by this board can be appealed by any person. They have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please re-refer back to either Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Poirier in the Planning Department. Again, thank you for your application and congratulations.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you. You as well. Case number 6. Stephen Bouchard, owner, 12 Pierce Street, sheet 86, lot 32, requesting the following variances from Land Use Code section 190-16, table 16-3. One for minimum lot frontage, 50 feet required, 21.38 feet proposed. 2 for minimum lot width, 50 feet required, 21.2 feet proposed. And 3 to exceed maximum side yard setback, 20 feet allowed, 36.7 feet proposed. All requests to subdivide one lot into 2 lots and construct one new single-family home. This is in the RC zone in Ward 4. Is there someone? Thank you. Mr. Minkara, you will be voting on this case. Please state your name and address, sir, for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Kenneth Lanier, Cornerstone, 25 Dean Avenue, Dracut, Massachusetts.
The floor, sir, is yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, Kenneth Lanier, representing Stephen Bouchard, who's also with us this evening in the audience. Mr. Bouchard's family recently obtained this property through a death of one of his great aunts. The parcel itself is located at 12 Pierce Street, which is just off of West Hollis Street. The parcel itself is probably one of the largest parcels in that neighborhood zone, which is the RC zone, which technically requires through the zoning code only a 5,000 square foot lot for a single family home with 50 feet of frontage. This particular parcel has just over 12,000 square feet with one single family home and approximately 86 feet of frontage. What we're hoping to do is to construct a second single-family home in the rear of the parcel by splitting the lot into 2 separate parcels, one with the required frontage of greater than 50 feet that would contain the existing single-family home, and a second with a access driveway to the rear of the lot. Both of the proposed lots would meet the lot size requirements as far as the area. The existing house would be on a constructed lot of 5,384 square feet. The new dwelling, which is also just a single-family home to be constructed in the rear, would be on a 6,813 square foot lot with that 21 feet of frontage gaining access to the rear of the parcel. The rear lot, being separated off, would meet the setback requirements for the new dwelling for both the rear and the side. Obviously, I was not aware there's a maximum side yard. I thought that was interesting. So we do require a variance for a maximum side yard. As you can see, the distance from the side yard to the front of the structure is 38 feet. We do also meet the open space requirements for both of the lots, and we feel as though that due to this shape of the lot, the ultimate size being larger than a majority of all of the properties in the general neighborhood, that this is a request that is acceptable, hopefully, to the board to move forward. We feel as though that the property being developed as it's shown would not be detrimental to the neighborhood. We are just constructing one additional single-family home. I'm sure you folks are familiar with the neighborhood. You go down that neighborhood, a lot of those homes are well within the setback requirements. They're all on smaller lots. So we're hoping that this house being constructed in that area, meeting the setbacks on a good-sized lot, would be sufficient for the board to see that it wasn't detrimental to the neighborhood. We also believe that this would not deter from any of the value of the properties in the neighborhood. We are constructing a new single-family home, and Mr. Bouchard's in the process of updating the existing single-family home. He's already spent a good amount of money to rehab that particular structure. The hope here for Mr. Bouchard is to try to have, he has 2 adult children currently still living at home, and it would be a good opportunity for him to provide home ownership to both of his children and allow them to stay within the neighborhood that his family grew up in. We do not believe, let's see, the general public, also we believe, economically it makes sense for Mr. Bouchard to move forward with this application for his children. And also we're hoping that due to the size of this lot and the fact that based on the size of the lot, Mr. Bouchard could in fact do 3 units on the property if he was to just attach them to the structure. We're hoping to just do the 2 single-family homes for his children, and might be glad to answer any questions at this time.
Are there any questions? Mr. Courier.
Well, you were just speaking about like an alternative design.
Yes, sir.
There, and I was wondering if you could walk me through like potential alternative designs that might. I certainly understand the proposal is for the 2-family, but one thing that struck me is, the 2 homes.
Yes, sir.
2 separate homes.
Completely
2
understand.
single-family homes. I certainly got that right. But
yes,
like
sir.
An alternative such as like perhaps enlarging the property and not needing any variances.
Correct. I believe by right, Mr. Falk could verify this for me. The applicant could add 2 additional units to the structure that would fit within the confines of the structure. They would have to be added, I believe. I don't know if they could be standalone, but ultimately that would require a decent amount of site work. You're adding 2 condos, more parking. The accessibility will look exactly the same. I just think it would be congesting the property. It is, I believe, by right. The hope here, again, was to keep the property in the family. It was inherited by the family, to move it on to his children. So our hope would be to situate a nice single family in the rear, keep the single family up front, but I do believe that you could add 2 additional condex units.
Thank you for answering that question. Mr. Falk, could you just nod yes on that? I'm just wondering what the alternative design maybe that's within the right of the applicant. Because I certainly appreciate the applicant's position of 2 homes for 2 children. I have to say it's not really a consideration of this board. This board really, by law, only looks at the special conditions of the property. And certainly I see that it's a big property, at a little over 10,000 square feet. But I was just wondering if the flag lot concept generally, I think, can be challenging as time goes by and different owners come along. But I was just wondering, let me just ask the same question to Mr. Falk about this zoning, what the other opportunities that come to mind to you are.
Sure, Mr. Courier. This property is zoned RC. Single family, two family, and a triplex will be allowed by right. For multifamily, you're allowed, or you have to have 3,484 square feet of land per unit. So they need 10,455 square feet of land for 3 units. They do exceed that. So Mr. Laney is correct that they could have a 3-unit building. They would meet the land area. Of course, they'd have to provide parking for it, and we'd have to see where the building is as far as setbacks and open space, other dimensional criteria, but it would fit.
Thank you. Just curious on that. I didn't have any other questions at the moment.
Does anyone else have any questions? I have a question, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
On the picture, it appears that there's 2 separate driveways. Is that exactly what you're going to do? Or are you going to have?
And when you say picture, ma'am, you mean the site plan?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes, there are 2 separate driveways. So interestingly enough, the driveway to the north that currently services the existing single family is a joined driveway with the property to the north. It does have access to the rear of the commercial piece that fronts on West Hollis Street as well. That driveway would remain. It can handle, I mean, I've seen 4 cars in it, but it appropriately shows 2 cars on the plan set. And the new driveway would be added in. I believe in the package I provided you a photograph of the location of where the actual new driveway would be entering into the property. See, currently it would be to the south of the existing dwelling, between the 2 existing dwellings, with sufficient space to allow for 5-foot setback on either side, with a 12-foot driveway.
Okay, because I see how you've outlined where the cars would park.
Yes, ma'am.
In relation to the property as well.
And again, I think the rear lot could have additional cars parked there, but to suffice the zoning requirement, I just showed the 2.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I will ask if there is anybody here present who would like to speak in favor of this application. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here who would like to speak with any questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to this application? And is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak with questions, comments, concerns, or opposition to the application? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the public meeting. Mr. Lionel.
I get to go first again, okay. When I drove by this, the neighborhood looked very crowded to me. And I'm generally not in favor of flag lots, or what I call them hammerhead lots. The construction of the second house in the back would have a rather difficult-to-use driveway. It would essentially remove the backyard from the existing house. I'm kind of struggling with this whole concept. So I'm interested to hear what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Courier.
Yeah, on number 2. Again, I have to emphasize, I certainly empathize how the owner would like to have 2 separate homes for 2 children. You know, what a nice thought, but that's not a criteria that we swear to hold. It's the law, and the law looks at the land. And I guess I'm struggling with the flag lot and the rather heavy variances it creates. And my sense is that the driveway for the second house is a challenging design. And granted, it's a tight existing neighborhood around it, but I'm struggling to find support for this versus opportunity that's available to the owner to increase the density by right, that I think would end up with a better design, but I certainly am looking forward to hearing other opinions on the matter. Let me know if I have this wrong.
Mr. Boucher.
Again, you know, the whole flag lot comes to mind, but I'm looking at this for what it is and for the neighborhood it is in. So you are right, Mr. Carrier, it is a tight neighborhood, but I think that's kind of the character of the neighborhood. And as I look at other parts of that neighborhood, you know, there's another similar lot that's kind of very irregular shaped that has the backside of the lot on Pierce Court on your map here. So again, I see one other really large lot besides the one that fronts West Hollis Street. And then the rest of the properties are like that. So your line of questioning to the applicant with the fact of the, you know, what else is available to do there, and it was, you know, putting in 3 units. So I strongly believe that having 2 separate homes, to me, would be less impactful to a degree than the 2 separate homes, than putting the 3 units in there. So I also look at the design of the placement of the house, and again, it's again, it looks compact. But some of the flag lots that I've seen, it's like the front doors of the houses, they face the house in front of it. So like the ones on East Dunstable Road, you know, there's a couple of locations where you've got a couple of those flag lots, and you get the house in the back, and the driveway comes in, and then the back, you know, the front of the house is facing the back of the house in front of it. You know, not that this matters here, but this is, you know, a little bit different design. That it seems like the front door is really on the side of the home. I'm not finding really, I guess I'm really, I'm not on the fence. I guess I'm trying to find a real reason why I would feel that I wouldn't support the application in consideration of the neighborhood itself and what it is today. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you. Mr. Neely.
That is, in my opinion, for that neighborhood, an oversized lot. I was surprised driving by that a lot of that size still exists in that neighborhood. As some of the folks had noted, that's a pretty crowded neighborhood, and there were many cars on the street there. My original concern before having read through all the paperwork was that they were not going to have a second driveway, and that alleviated quite a few of my concerns. Anything we can do to get cars off of the city streets, I'm in favor of. I thought this was a very creative way of getting an additional house in there. I feel like it fits the character of the neighborhood. It's certainly not going to adversely affect the property values. We haven't had any abutters speak against this. You have a similar type property over there at Pierce Court. So this idea in that neighborhood has already been examined and taken advantage of. I would be in favor of this application.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara.
I can also find support for this application. I think density, as has been noted, it's an oversized lot. The density that would result from this would actually still be less than what's allowed, and probably less than really most of the other properties in the area. It is a very crowded area. I'm just also amused by the different names for these. We used to call them dogleg lots. A lot of different terms, I guess. What I was really waiting to hear was concern from abutters, which I thought we might, and we haven't. So it doesn't appear that there's concern that this would adversely impact the neighborhood. My other concern was the proximity of the new driveway. Because we're looking at a frontage variance, how would that impact other driveways on the street? But this driveway is actually situated pretty well spaced between the two existing driveways, so it doesn't come up right against another one. So given that the density is consistent, it is unusual, there's no question about it, but I support the application.
Thank you. And I too find support. In the beginning, I wasn't too sure, was the driveways that, you know, stepped me. And that's why I asked the question I asked, and Mr. Neely and yourself, Mr. Mancara, Mr. Boucher, you all had reasonable answers to some of my thought processes. And so I too find support for this application. Would somebody care to make a motion? Thank you, Mr. Boucher.
I'd like to make a motion for the area, for the area variance. I'd like to make a motion to approve the area variance for Stephen Bouchard, owner of 12 Pierce Street, sheet, what is that sheet? Mine's kind of erased here. Sheet 86, sorry. Lot 32, requesting the following variances from Land Use Code, Section 190-16, Table 16-3. One, for a minimum lot frontage of 50 feet required, 21.38 feet proposed. And two, for a minimum lot width, 50 feet required, 21.2 feet proposed. And three, to exceed maximum side yard setback, 20 feet allowed, 36.7 feet proposed. All requests to subdivide one lot into two lots and construct one new single-family home in the RC zone, Ward 4. We find that the variances needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property, given the special conditions of the property. Again, the main special condition is that this is one of the largest lots in this neighborhood. Even though the neighborhood is pretty dense, this is a very large lot for that neighborhood. We find that the benefits sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than variance. We find that it is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance. We find it will not adversely affect property values of surrounding parcels. We find it's not contrary to public interest, and we find that substantial justice would be served. So again, I make a motion to approve the area variance.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr.
Question
McCara.
on that, was that just for one or for all three? I think you were doing it for all three
All three,
requests. Okay,
yes,
thank you.
yes.
That's the way I had it. I just wanted to make sure. I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Mr. Mancara.
Got it.
Are you good, Mr.
Yep.
Courier? Thank
Yep.
you. Mr. Lionel, how do you vote?
Mr. Lionel votes not in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes not in favor.
Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Mancara, how do you vote?
Mr. Mancara votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. That is a 3-2 vote. Congratulations, Mr. Lanier and Mr. Bouchard.
Excellent.
The variance has been granted. Anyone has the opportunity to appeal any decision made by this board, and they have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, concerns, please refer back to either Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kay Poirier. Thank you for your application, and have a good evening.
Excellent. Thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Now we will go back to case number 2. And I will read that back into the record. Mr. Mancara, you will be voting on this case. Bowers Street Realty Trust, Constance Gauthier, trustee, owner, Traditions, a barbershop, Eddie Content, applicant, 42 Harbor Avenue, sheet 19, lot 78, requesting use variance from Land Use Code Section 190-15, Table 15-1, number 35, to convert a former retail space to a barbershop. This is in the RB Zone, Ward 7, and Attorney Perlman, I got it right this time. You have the floor, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
Madam Chair, members of the Zoning Board, good evening. Andy Perlman, attorney with Prunier and Perlman here in Nashua. First, thank you for accommodating the schedule this evening. I'm here on behalf of the Bauer Street Realty Trust and Eddie Content, who wants to open up his barbershop called the Traditions a Barbershop. 42 Harbor is in the RB district, as the chair just mentioned. Barbershops are not allowed, not a permitted use in the RB district. I would note that they would be allowed directly across the street in the D3 MU district, but we just happen to be on the wrong side of Harbor. Mr. Content intends to open up his barbershop in the same retail commercial space that has been used at this site for decades. I did the research through all of the city files, as did Ms. Poirier and Mr. Falk. We came up with the same conclusion that this has been a long-time retail commercial type of establishment where Mr. Content wants to open up his shop, and so we're just essentially switching from the convenience store that was there into the proposed barbershop. The barbershop is intended to be open 6 days a week, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., 5 stations for hair cutting. We don't expect any retail changes, any exterior changes to the site other than a new sign for Traditions of Barbershop. And I don't know if you've noticed recently, but all those tacky convenience store signs that you see advertising beer sales or cigarette sales, those are coming down. The Gauthier family is looking to clean up the property with this barbershop. Building has 11 apartments, and we're not really focused on the apartments. We're not focused necessarily on the parking, but just so the board is aware, there are 11 apartments in the building, plus the retail or barbershop space. I provided a parking chart. Did everyone receive that? I have extra copies if you haven't.
Is it this, the main Paquette plan?
Nope. Let me pass it out just so you can see. And the reason I'm doing this is because I just want you to understand the nature of these apartments are so small, and the way they get rented out, there's very little apartment parking being used on this site. All right, so if you could bear with me.
Thank you.
Thanks. There's more candy down on that table.
Last thing I need. You can see that the units are very small. The 5 of the units have a long-term lease with Harbor Homes. You can see that the tenants use 6 or 5 or 6, I forget off the top of my head, of the actual number of parking spaces available according to the Maynard Paquette plan. And my point of all this is just to show you that there's, even though we have 11 apartments on site, we have a barbershop being proposed, the parking still works at this site. They haven't had any issues with parking over the years. And so we believe that the parking for the barbershop will work. I would also point out that the parking for the barbershop requirements is less than the convenience store. The convenience store requires one parking space for every 200 square feet of the convenience store, whereas a barbershop requires parking for one space for every 500 square feet. So we're improving, we're making the site more conforming with the proposed barbershop. One last thing just to point out with activity at the site, a convenience store typically has deliveries being made day in, day out, all day long, coming and going, the various trucks or whatnot, and that likewise would be far reduced. With the barbershop, the deliveries would be far fewer, relatively smaller types of deliveries being brought to the site. So with that, Madam Chairman, I would briefly run through the criteria for the variance. And then Mr. Content, may want to speak to the board. We believe that the variance is not contrary to the public interest. We're using the same site that's been used for convenience store and retail since at least 1992. We see no harm to the public health, safety, welfare of the neighborhood. We're going to stay in the character of the neighborhood by having this retail shop of the barber shop, the retail services, similar to the convenience store. We see that we are meeting the spirit of the ordinance because we're using the previous retail space. We'll continue to maintain the character of the neighborhood without harming any public harm, safety or welfare for others. Substantial justice will be done in this case. Again, we see no harm to the public while allowing Eddie Content, a young entrepreneur who has been a barber for many years. He wants to open up his own business, hire a handful of people. We think the substantial justice factor weighs in favor of the applicant in this case. We don't see any impact to surrounding property values, no exterior changes other than a sign for the barber shop. And the site is now dormant today, or the retail piece of the site is dormant, and we're going to bring that back to life. As to the hardship criteria, you have my application. When the board granted the variance in 1992, you looked at such factors as the weird shape of the lot. You see this little triangular piece right on Harbor cutting to Bow. That's an unusual little city-owned parcel right there, and the building is shaped with that unusual layout of the lot. You looked in 1992. You looked at the long history of the commercial uses, the storefront being right on the sidewalk. It'd make it unusual or irregular for a residential use, and all those same factors apply today. We see no fair and substantial reason to prohibit a barber shop, and given the site history, we see we have a reasonable use being proposed. I would take any questions, or perhaps the board would like to hear from Mr. Content.
Mr. Boucher.
I know we'll get to it, but there's obviously somebody who had raised some concerns about a neighbor with some issues. But I want to get back to the parking. So I think what you're stating is that, or if I understand correctly, the original site plan had 10 parking spaces, and there's 5 that are being occupied right now. But am I to understand correctly that those spaces, there are some spaces that are available for patrons of the barber shop?
That's correct.
Okay.
They're not designated. They're
Okay.
open
That was the
for
other question
everyone.
I had. So,
yeah.
So again, that was, the understanding is that there is available on-site parking for patrons of the barber shop if they choose to park in the parking lot there.
Yes, and 2 other comments there. The answer is yes. There are spaces available on-site. And don't forget that folks who have cars, if they're going off to work during the day, they're gone, while most of the barbershop hours are during the daytime mostly. And finally, honestly, we all park on the street for barbershops. We use street parking. It's just the truth of the matter. Think about the barbershops on East and West Pearl Street, Main Street. It's all street parking. I would be parking on Bowers if I went to this. I'm not sure I would necessarily pull into that parking lot.
So I agree with you completely. Barber shop I use is in Lowell, and it's right near the University of Lowell, and it's one of those things. And again, he's got a little lot in the back. We created parking, but no one really knows that. And what he did was, and I was just wondering whether or not, and I was just curious, not that you're going to leave anybody who's going to park in front of somebody else's driveway. That's just somebody who just doesn't care, right? But just throwing out there, I didn't know whether or not, for people who may start going there or not know the area, or kind of drive up and say, geez, where do I park, even though to me there's plenty of parking across the street or whatever. Do you think that maybe just I don't know what's allowed, but a small sign or something on the side of the building that's, barber shop parking might help maybe the situation? But other than that, I just want to verify that there was available parking there for patrons.
There is, and we would be happy to entertain a condition like that, to have just a sign, barbershop parking in this lot, maybe arrows or whatnot. And if I may just comment, I know a neighbor kind of weighed in with an email, and so I forwarded that email to the Gauthier family, and they replied, a long explanation, but I said point blank, have you ever had an issue? and quote, and this is as of yesterday, we never had anyone from the city of Nashua or Nashua Police Department come to us about our tenants or the store blocking her driveway. All right, so, you know, it's a little bit of a tight neighborhood. People may perceive things differently, but, you know, I think it's a matter of policing. If there's an issue, we'll, you know, the Gothiers or Eddie will get out there and deal with it.
Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have any questions? Mr. Neely?
So the drawing we have here of the 10 parking spaces, it does denote some arrows of how the cars enter and exit. Are those arrows actually painted on the parking lot?
No.
And I think we're all moving in the same direction here. We're really concerned about the neighbor next door. We want to keep cars away from her house. Are you folks opposed to actually painting those arrows in there if we're going to put some signage?
No, not at all. So we have to go to the planning board for a change of use. We would be happy to have, you know, this plan that you see here as a condition for this board to consider, recommending back to the planning board. The Gothier family, they do intend to repave at some point in time, but in the meantime, those arrows, you know, and a small sign, and so in fact, that's not a problem at all.
Thank you.
Mr. Courier?
Just a thought, since we kind of opened up the letter
Yeah.
in opposition from the person, I think on the right, you might say, as you look at the proposed barber shop. A thought I have, and I'm just wondering what your opinion on it is, like, when it was a convenience store, I could see where someone would be like, oh, I want to get a gallon of milk. I'll just be a second. I'll park here and I'll run in and I'll be right out. But maybe with a barber shop, people are going to know I might be 10 or 15 minutes or maybe an hour. And maybe there's less likelihood that someone would be kind of like a jerk and park in front of someone's driveway. I don't know if that's me or what you might think about that.
Well, Mr. Curry, I think you and I would probably be about that, you know, 5-minute window of time for our haircut. But I would agree with you. I would think just the nature of the customers that are coming in, some are going to be there for 15 minutes, some might be there for half an hour, just, you know, chit-chatting maybe, all right? I really see most of the parking is going to hit Bauer Street, you know, if the site gets used and gets popular.
Another thought I had, I mean, in looking at the property, I didn't realize how the parking lot seems pretty well used right now, at least in the evening when I do my site walks. But I didn't know there's, if the barber shop is approved and goes in, is there any opportunity that say Mr. Content, if he sees somebody park in front of the neighbor's driveway and walks into a shop, I would think he'd be inclined to say, hey, you can't park there, you know, you got to move, where in the convenience store, that maybe that probably never happened because you don't even see what's going on out front.
Well, I would tend to agree with that. You know, think about a convenience store. There's one, maybe two people behind the counter, all right? You know, a barbershop is going to have, you know, a handful of folks there, Mr. Content, a number of the barbers. So I think the ability to police this is going to be better than a convenience store.
Yep. And one other thought is, do you know why that corner is cut off the front of the building?
I honestly don't know. I didn't run title on that piece. It's owned by the city. There's a little park bench right there.
The answer is the old railroad right-of-way.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Went by the old high school, cut right over there, in case you were wondering.
Well, okay, well, thank you.
Now you know.
Well, thank you. If I may, Eddie Content would like to introduce himself.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I just want to note that's, I assume, why the zone line takes that shape. You kind of see that. That's kind of cool.
That was actually really cool. Hello, how are you guys?
Would you please state your name and address, sir, for the record?
My name is Edward Content. I live on 6B Cherry Street, which is about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes away from the barbershop. To get back to the parking issue, so there are windows, 3 big windows in front of the property, and I am able to see, especially where that neighbor is. So I think she had gotten upset because painters and the florist people that were coming in, they were pulling up to the building for the first time, and they had parked their van there, and I hadn't known to knowledge, and we've actually spoken, me and the neighbor, and we've actually come to an agreement. I told her that I will be very vigilant if I do see anybody parking there. You are correct. I'm not going to be like, all right, you know. I'm going to be like, hey, buddy, you have to move. It's actually really good. I've been cutting in Nashua. I was working at Major League Barbershop for 10 years. I have a very, very good clientele. I cut actually a couple local police officers in the neighborhood. Actually, the police officer that's actually in that zone, I cut him. And so my main thing is public safety and community. I cut students from 3 different schools, middle schools, Fairgrounds, Pennachuck, and Elm Street. I'm actually the gym teacher for my daughters. I have 2 daughters. I'm the gym teacher for their private school. And kids and community is my biggest thing. And one of the best things about, you know, becoming a barbershop owner is that I can actually utilize community a lot. The basketball court, are you guys familiar with it? That's kind of in back of Harbor Ave. So I plan on utilizing that in the summertime, get, you know, cornhole tournaments and you know, basketball tournaments, a lot of things for the community. In the summertime when it gets nice, or springtime, fall, when it's nice weather out, the door would be propped open. So, and plus those windows, so I would have a very good visual of everything that's going on. And obviously, whoever does come to work there would be having meetings every week, and they would be updated with the parking situation. You know, if you see somebody, just, hey, sir, you can't park here, you know. I'm sure there's going to be a time or two where you know, it's probably slipped and they're parked there for a couple minutes, but I'm sure that most of our clients that will be come to the shop, they will know first thing. As far as the signage going up with hey, parking over here and stuff, that's actually a great idea. I've talked to the owner, Gary, the Gothiers, and he had said that he's actually planning on, as soon as springtime, of repainting the parking lot, the lines, and doing some arrows to make it helpful for people to get in and out of the parking lot. So that's a great thing too. And I just wanted to say this is my dream. Me and my wife and our 2 daughters. And I really believe that this barbershop is gonna not only break, you know, start a new generational trend in my family, but it's gonna be very beneficial to the community. You know, I feel I want to have a kid's closet in there because I donate a lot of clothes. So I cut a lot of autistic kids and stuff. So family orientated and professionality is the biggest thing. Those are the biggest things that I look for. So I know neighbors, that neighbor might seem a little sketchy at first, but when time goes by, they're gonna see what that barbershop turns into, and everybody's gonna love it. I can guarantee that. I can guarantee that.
Thank you. And I don't know if this can be done or without speaking to the Department of the Highways, the roads. Could her driveway be painted with a yellow curb or something to designate no parking?
I'd have to refer to DPW on that, street department.
I just don't know, just another way to, I mean, and it might not, but because she has a disability.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's I'm sorry. There's a no parking sign, but I was thinking maybe, you know how you can paint white lines, strips, to indicate no parking there? That would possibly help too. just so people, it's more vigilant, because instead of just a sign, they can see the white strips to indicate no parking there as well. It was just an idea that I thought of. Just anything that we have to do to make this happen, I'll be more than willing to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any comments or questions?
Thank you
Thank
guys
you very
so much.
much. So, there is nobody here to speak in favor, in opposition, nobody on Zoom to speak in favor, in opposition. I'm going to close the public
You want to
hearing.
talk about the letter?
Oh, the letter.
There was a letter.
You know, we
But
discussed
they
this
discussed
letter
it,
in the context with the attorney and with the applicant himself. Do you want this letter read into the record, or you just want to note it that Carolyn Goodwin, 44 half Harbor Ave, submitted a letter in opposition?
I think that's fine, because we've discussed a lot of the letter, so I
We-
don't
yes.
see the need to read the whole letter, but we do have it in the record, and it has been discussed by everybody, so
Correct.
I think we're good.
Okay, that clarifies the correct part of it. So now I will close the public hearing and open the public meeting. And Mr. Boucher.
I'm going to support the application. I'm not sure that I was just obviously trying to help the situation. I think that the issues that the neighbor had are valid issues, may have existed at some point or another, probably when the store was there, because I think that's most likely people just running in. And like I said, you know, there are people who just bluntly just don't care, because they're just running in, running out. What's the big deal? I don't think this is this type of a business. Again, going to the planning board, I think that's their expertise. So I'm not going to pose or want to put any special conditions or any signage. I think that'll be up to the planning board and the property owner on whether or not that's something valid. So I'm going to support the application the way it stands.
Thank you. Mr. Courier.
Overall, I'm in support of the application. Certainly it's a tight property. I think that at first gave me pause, realizing that there were so many apartments associated with it upstairs. But I think the use as the barber shop is much less intense than the convenience store, and it's less apt to disturb the abutter to the right of it. I think a lot of how that plays out is, I think some painting. It's not this board's purview. I think that could really go a long way to minimizing that problem. But also a lot of it, I think, is the, you know, kind of just diligence on behalf of the barbershop owner, that if someone's parking there, it's probably going to be one of his customers, and he could probably just get the car moved. So I think that how the business is managed goes a long way, and I think there's better opportunity, again, for that situation with this barber shop than with the convenience store. So I do think it meets the criteria of the law overall, and I'm going to support it.
Thank you. Mr. Neely.
I appreciate the presentation by Mr. Content. I think you've got a great vision. Hopefully your takeaway here was that you have a neighbor who is not loving the parking situation. I know you said you had talked to the neighbor, but we have this email dated yesterday. All right, so this problem hasn't gone away yet. I am gonna recommend that the board pass this. Parking is gonna be something to keep an eye on. I would certainly recommend that some lines be painted. I would recommend that some type of signage go up in the parking lot. You know, this is right on the line. Literally, as we said earlier, if it was across the street, this would be done. And I hate to take away the vision and something good that could happen for the neighborhood just, you know, based on 100 feet. I'm just not going to do it. I think that this is a project that should move forward, so I would be in support of this.
Thank you. Mr. Minkara.
I also support the project, the proposal. I mean, clearly, there's always been a commercial use there, and this is definitely a less intense use than the convenience store that was there. And I agree with Mr. Boucher. I don't want to micromanage the parking issue. I support the application as it stands.
Thank you. Mr. Lionel.
I'm also in support of the application. I agree with my colleagues that it is a less intensive use than the convenience store. There is adequate parking provided, and if there are problems with parking enforcement, that's not our purview. I wish the applicant all the success in the world.
Thank you. And I too support the application for all the aforementioned reasons. There's a driveway next to where I live where one of the owners previously was health impaired. And the driveways were very close. There was only a small space. And so we were hyper vigilant to make sure, especially around 4th of July, when everyone uses the streets in that neighborhood to park, to just don't park there. Because I always worried if an ambulance or a fire truck had to come. And it came to pass, but you could also put up a cone. While I don't think we want to micromanage the parking, I think what we were all trying to do is maybe give some ideas and, you know, thoughts to how something like this could be accomplished. Like Mr. Lionel, I commend the owner, Mr. Content, for what he wants to do, his long-range plans, not just for that barber shop. Is there somebody who would care to make a motion?
No.
Mr. Lionel, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion on behalf of Bauer Street Realty Trust, Constant Gauthier trustee. Applicant is Traditions, a barber shop. Eddie Content, 42 Harbor Avenue. Sheet 19, lot 78. Requesting use variance from Land Use Code Section 190-15, Table 15-1, number 35, to convert a former retail space to a barber shop. This is in the RB Zone, Ward 7. The board finds that this variance is needed to enable the applicant's proposed use of the property. The property has been used as a commercial retail establishment for many, many years, and the board believes that this will be less intensive than the previous use. The benefit sought by the applicant cannot be achieved by some other method reasonably feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the variance, because without a use variance, they would not be allowed to open a barber shop there. The board believes this is within the spirit and intent of the ordinance, that it will not adversely affect the property values of surrounding parcels. The board believes it is not contrary to public interest and substantial justice would be served. So I'll make a motion to approve the use variance.
And thank you, Mr. Courier, for your second. Mr. Boucher, how do you vote?
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Courier, how do you vote?
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Minkara, how do you vote?
Mr. Minkara votes in favor.
Mr. Lionel, how do you vote?
Mr. Lionel votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. Congratulations, Mr. Content. Attorney Perlman, your variance has been granted. Anyone has the opportunity to appeal any decision this board makes. They have 30 days with which to do so. Should you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please re-refer back to either Mr. Carter Falk or Ms. Kate Poirier in the planning department. Again, thank you very much for your application and your vision. Good luck. Thank you, Mr. Perlman. Okay, moving on. To the, oops. We have minutes from January 24th. Did anybody see any adjustments?
I did not.
No.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from January 24th, 2023.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. It would be
Did you get that, Jack?
Yep, Lionel seconded.
Mr. Neely. You would be voting. Mr. Boucher.
Mr. Boucher votes in favor.
Mr. Lionel.
Mr. Lionel votes in favor.
Mr. Courier.
Mr. Courier votes in favor.
Mr. Neely.
Mr. Neely votes in favor.
And myself, Mary Ellen McKay, I also vote in favor. Does anyone see any regional impact?
No.
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 No regional impact. We do have a motion for rehearing. So, is there anything that we need to know about this motion for rehearing?
We'll give you everything. Well, it'll be all in the package. It'll be the request itself and all the previous case information and minutes.
Was it in this package?
No.
No, it'll be in the
No.
next
Oh,
package.
okay. It's for the next meeting.
It's for the next meeting. I just wondered if there was something maybe they wanted us to have or we needed. I'd rather ask the question and get a no than not ask the question and be missing something. In that case, is there any further business to come before this board?
Nope.
Then I'm going to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. I mean.
Wow, all right.
I'm having such a bad.
I just want to enjoy summer, if you don't mind.
I want to go to Cape May. I do mind my own, irrationality. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you also.
Happy Valentine's
Thank you. And
Is
I'm
that your
going to,
motion to adjourn?
yeah, I'm going to make
All
the
right.
motion at 8:41.
All right. So adjourned.
So moved, so adjourned. I don't think anyone wants to stay.
Recording stopped.